talking about Daniel's Canyon. There's several things there in Daniel's Canyon that have been written about in the books, and I went out and found a lot of them. Some things that I haven't been able to find yet, but I'm not gonna. So let's see. Some George Thompson in Some Dreams Die and Lost Gold of the Old Spanish Trail, Lost Gold on the Old Spanish Trail, talks about the Boren and Bethers mine, and then Kerry Boren in The Gold of Kerry Shanab and Lost Gold of the Uinta, those two books he's written. He talks about the Boren and Bethers mine. And I'm not going to read the whole story about it, but I've just pulled out the clues to where it's at here on these pages. And we'll just go over those, and then I've got some video that we'll look at later when I went out there. The story is that just to go over real quick, a guy named Boren, that's the last name Boren, and he happens to be Kerry Ross Boren's, I think, great uncle. He's related somehow. And another guy named Bethers. They found a mine up there on the ridge between Center Creek and Daniels Canyon, Daniels Creek. And they went up and was working on it, trying to open it up, and they got back in like 75 feet. The really interesting thing about it was they found a stone, and I'll show a picture of it if that's indeed the stone. It looks like it matches the description, and it's supposed to be the stone. Of the stone that's got some hieroglyphics on it that look more Indian than Spanish, but to me, supposedly it tells of where the mine is, and it was located a little bit down the canyon below the mine, the one main mine, and supposedly that rock's been taken now, and it's in somebody's backyard or yard there in Heber. But it has been seen by several people, and a photo taken of it, and I'll show that to you. But the clues are that, according to George Thompson, he talks about 2 or 3 mines in his book in that area, and then Boren claims that there's several. He says there's at least 5 on the ridge top itself, and then he says at least 5 old tunnels exist at the crest of the dividing ridge between Daniels and Center Creek. But the main tunnel, which was the focus of Boren's and Bethers' efforts, is located about a half mile directly above the hieroglyphic rock, and we don't know. There's no real clues where that hieroglyphic rock was, but there is. So the point is, there could be several mines in that area. I have a picture of one that you can see it from the road. I flew a drone up there, and I got some footage of that, and I've got a picture of that's supposedly that same mine, that with some people in front of it, a woman and 3 kids, or 2 kids, can't remember, but it's supposed to be in front of that mine. And if there's others there, I don't know that anybody's found them. There is one down lower, I'll show you, right pretty close to the main road, that I think could be part of the mines that they're talking about here. And then I've got video of it, not video, but I've got pictures of it, of the inside. Some guys probably in the early 90s dug back into it and opened it up and got in there, and they posted some pictures online, and I have those that I'll show you. So the other clue is it is located about 2 miles from Daniels Creek. One book says Daniels Creek, and one book says Daniels Ranch, which is on Daniels Creek. So I believe it's Daniels Ranch. And according to Kerry Boren, Daniels Ranch was located not far from Aaron Daniels' original homestead, which was about 1 mile north of the mouth of Daniels Creek, where it flows into the Provo River. So about a mile north of there is where not Aaron Daniels, but Boren's ranch was. It was near Daniels Ranch, and that's where Daniels Ranch was. So Boren's ranch was nearby. So about a mile north of the mouth of Daniels Creek, where it dumps into the Provo River. That's one clue, that it's 2 miles from there to the mine, and it's about a mile and a half south of the old Boren Ranch. There's a trail that leads up Center Creek Canyon. So a mile and a half south of the Boren Ranch, which was near about a mile, not far from the Aaron Daniels' original homestead, which was about a mile north of the mouth of Daniels Creek. So a mile north of the mouth of Daniels Creek, and then about a mile and a half south of the old Boren Ranch. An old trail leads up Center Creek Canyon, marked by trees with Spanish symbols carved into the trunks. And that one throws me, because from the bottom of Center Creek Canyon, there really aren't any trees. Maybe there were back in the day. They've been timbered, cut down, and they're gone now. But it says that there was an old trail marked with Spanish symbols carved in the trunks that led up to the mine. So let's see, the tunnels. Okay, here's the size of the tunnels that George Thompson says the tunnels were 3 to 4 feet wide and 5 feet high, which contradicts what Kerry Boren says, because Kerry says he went there. And he went inside, he found and went inside, and he says that places it was so narrow that it becomes necessary to turn sideways, and is not high enough for a tall man such as myself to stand without stooping slightly. So Kerry describes them as narrow and short, and George says they were, George Thompson, they were 3 to 4 feet wide and 5 feet high. Yes, a tall man wouldn't be able to stand in a 5 foot high tunnel, but okay, the portals were covered with rock and brush as though purposely concealed. It seems as if the Indians covered them to conceal them. And we talked about the hieroglyphic rock. It says that the characters on the stone were described as representing the figure of a man with his hands thrown up as if suddenly surprised. Another is of a burro or pack animal, and another is of half a moon. So we'll see those on the picture that I have. Other characters were said to be perfectly visible but undecipherable. And you'll see those. It really doesn't make a lot of sense, but they're clearly there. The mine must have been in the same canyon as the stone was found, because the author wrote, Bethers had discovered a strange hieroglyphic rock in the canyon below. So the rock was in the same canyon below where the mine was. And then it says after they found the rock, they searched the canyon until they were successful in locating the mine. So they searched the same canyon. So it was up above in the same canyon. So Boren and Bethers, they opened one tunnel. So they found 2 of them. They found 2 of them right next to each other, and they opened up one to 75 feet, and then they encountered a caved-in section too dangerous to dig through. The other was reopened for 25 feet before winter drove them out of the mountains. And then Boren and Bethers, original Boren and Bethers, they stopped working on it after a point in time, and then others kept working on it. And then in 1972, Kerry Boren went there, he says, and the tunnel had been cleared out to a depth of nearly 150 feet. but then again it was clogged with rock and debris. So when there's a reporter back in when the first Boren and Bethers were working on the mine that went there, the Boren and Bethers took them, and he said that from the Daniels Ranch to the first mine that was near just above the stone in the same canyon, the hieroglyphic stone, he said it took them an hour and 20 minutes to hike up to it. Kerry Boren says this is from the Daniels Ranch to the mine, an hour and 20 minutes. Kerry Boren said he found where the Daniels Ranch would have been, and from there it took him 2 hours to hike to the mine. So anywhere between an hour and 20 minutes and 2 hours it takes from the Daniels Ranch to hike to the mine. So I want to read this real quick. This is from the reporter that went with them. He wrote an article for the newspaper. And he said, after finding Misters Bethers and Boren at their homes on Daniels Creek, the writer took up a long and tedious march under their guidance to the spot in question. Just 1 hour and 20 minutes were taken up in the ascent from Boren's ranch up the dividing ridge between Daniels and Center Creeks, at an angle of what seemed 45 degrees, to the newly discovered mine, and about 2 miles distance, and almost on top of the Wasatch Range. So 2 miles distance from the Daniels ranch, and it took him an hour and 20 minutes at about a 45-degree angle hike, he surmised. Here we found a tunnel which had been driven about 25 feet into the solid rock following a vein of ore from the surface, which is reported to return very good assays in gold. This tunnel is the result of labor at odd times during the past year of the two men, talking about Boren and Bethers. Northwest of this prospect is another which has only recently been known to exist there. So there's another portal there, although it has every appearance of being there for many years past. How far this tunnel enters through the solid rock into the side of the lofty mountain remains yet to be found out, as the work of clearing out the dirt and rock that now fills it up has only been completed far enough to enable the prospectors to determine its course and dimensions. A short time ago, there was still another mouth of a tunnel accidentally stumbled onto, lying southeast about 75 yards of the other two and on a direct line. So here, this reporter, is saying that there was 3 portals found there. George Thompson says there was 2 or 3. I think in one book he says 2, and then in his other book he says there was 3. And Kerry Boren says there again there was several at the top, and then the one down below the ridge top. So this one was lying southeast about 75 yards of the other two and on a direct line. This also was filled up with loose dirt and rock by very easy digging, so possibly filled in by Indians or the Spanish. The work of clearing this tunnel out is being given the most attention at present, about 20 feet of which had been accomplished when the reporter was a visitor there, leaving a hole through solid rock from 3 to 4 feet wide and from 5 to 6 feet high. Okay, so that matches with George Thompson's description, bigger and wider than Kerry's description, but maybe Kerry was in a whole different tunnel. So that's how much has been exposed. As stated above, the work of cleaning out the tunnel is done mostly with shovels, laying bare the top and sides of solid stone, which plainly demonstrates that the implements of man have been used in the first excavation. The foregoing are some of the reasons advanced for thinking that these tunnels might at one time have been the source from which the Mexicans in former days, or Spanish, later Mexicans in former days, replenished their larders. Another circumstance which is also used in this connection is a large granite rock which stands perpendicular in the ground about a half-mile distant down the ridge from the prospect. It is covered with peculiar-looking hieroglyphics cut into it with apparently an instrument after the style of an ordinary punch. The rock is of a wedge-shaped, being about a foot thick on one side and tapers down to about 2 inches thickness on the other. It stands about 5 feet high and is about 4 feet wide. The characters upon it can only be translated by those accustomed to such signs. One of the figures is of a man with hands thrown up as though suddenly surprised, which could mean meaning higher up, he wrote. Another is what we would call that of a burro or pack mule, or meaning ore or cargoes. Another, a half moon, a symbol for silver. And there are a number of others. While perfectly visible, we are not able to decipher their meaning. Messrs. Bethers and Boren, the owners of the find, argue that these hieroglyphics have been put on this rock as a guide for the persons who formerly worked the mines to go in, returning to them after several months or years' absence. As would of necessity been the case if the Mexican theory is true, a careful watch is constantly kept by the men engaged in cleaning out the tunnel for bones of the murdered Mexicans who were thrown in there. But none have been discovered as yet. Whether or not the gentlemen have found any lost mine is a matter that will unravel, but they have found prospect holes of some description, made by human hands is a positive certainty, and we hope that development will open up to them a bonanza, whether Spaniards first discovered it or not. So later, Kerry Rossborn, after he went inside, this is many years later, probably in the mid to late 70s, he says that since that reporter was there, that several pieces of old Spanish armor, all perfectly preserved, and 2 old Spanish swords were found beneath the rubble, and 3 human skulls and some bones were found. One sword had a beautifully carved hilt in the shape of an eagle and the initials SVR scratched on the guard. So there's some evidence that it was a Spanish mine, and there were some Spanish artifacts and probably some dead Spaniards in there. So that leads credence to the theory that the mines were covered by the Indians after they killed the Spaniards and threw them in there and then covered it up. But that's the clues. So now we'll go and I've got some video of me going to these locations. I didn't go all the way up to the mine at the top, this Boren and Bethers mine, but I've got some pictures and video of it from down below. So we'll move on and show you that. So here's a video of the Boren and Bethers mine. It's just located on this hillside. You can see it as you drive up Daniels Canyon. That's the dump right there. If I can hold my camera still. I haven't been up there. I'll throw my drone up there and I'll show you pictures of that. But this is the location of that mine that's in the story, the Boren and Bethers mine. You zoom back out and you see where it is on that hillside. Here's another view of it closer. You can see it's right above the gravel pit and whatever they're digging there. Here's the other one that's at closer to the road. You can see that's the one right there. And don't know who did that originally. I showed you the pictures of it. The way when somebody dug into it. It's right below this gravel pit that somebody's put in here recently. Located right on the just at the mouth of the canyon there. Don't know much about that mine. So as you're coming up Daniels Canyon, you come to Clegg Canyon. And then right across the road, up high on the hill, just wanted to point this out. There's a, looks like what might be a mine or a cave up there. So I hiked up there one day just to check it out, and it's just a little cave. It doesn't go back very far. So I just wanted to point that out. If you see that coming down here, don't bother going up there, because it's just a small little alcove that just doesn't go back very far. So don't bother chasing that one down.